Hello and welcome to the weekly meeting for Kubernetes Sig Docs. Today is August 14th, 2018. I'm Zach Corlison. Hooray. Let's begin, as we always do, by asking if there are any new or first-time contributors here. Looks pretty familiar, so hello, everyone. Updates and reminders. The PR Wrangler for this week is Brad Topol. Let's see, I'm still semi-unavailable due to health reasons, but I'm pleased to announce I'm getting better. So DM me directly on Slack for now, just to make sure that I see something that needs attention. Let's move on to the agenda. We'll hold for an update on 112 from Zach Arnold. Jennifer and Andrew, I see that there's a note for kubelet generated docs for Kubernetes PR number 66034. Someone or a small working group focused on generated docs. Do you want to tell us more about that?
I don't see Andrew. I'll step up here. This particular PR is specifically around the kubelet, but in digging around about it, Michael Taufin discovered that there are probably similar issues with all of the generated docs. In other words, we cannot guarantee that any of them is complete. Kubelet is simply the most extreme case. So that's how I'm reading the PR at this point. That might not be completely accurate. This is something that needs to be addressed both by folks working in the KK repository and by Sig Docs. So this is simply an ask for a small working group. It can't be just one person. Andrew feels like he's pretty much reached the end of what he can contribute. I'm happy to continue helping, but I can't do it on my own. So if we can put the word out, anyone else interested, if there's anybody on this call who'd like to know at a very high level, the issue is that the commands that, there's CLI help man pages for, and then that's what we get that content is what we get for the generated docs. The one quick workaround is to pull the CLI content out of built Kubernetes. But we ought to be able to figure out a way to get it. Oh, there's Andrew. Andrew can correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, including his availability. Anyway, we can do that, but it seems that we ought to be able to pull the content all out without having to build. The problem is that at a very high level, content lives in different places. It's not all in the same place, and it's not all built by the same tool for the CLI help. But the generated docs scripts assume that it is. And that's why we get a mismatch. And that's an extremely crude and not complete explanation of the problem.
So is there efforts to redesign the script or redesign the docs, or that's what the working group's for?
That's what the working group is for. Yeah, there's more conversation in the PR. I don't want to misrepresent it. We still need more information still. I mean, Andrew met with Michael Taufin, and so he might have some more information here. But basically either we build Kubernetes and pull out the CLI help from that, or we completely redo the generate. We have to redo the generate scripts in any case, but the level at which we do it is.
Michael said the other option was to ask the people who build the SPF tool to add an option where they can turn off third-party flags. I think that's what he said.
That's the part I was forgetting.
Yeah. So, but I don't know what kind of process that is or how long that might take.
Right.
Okay, so at bottom, what I'm hearing is a request for people who are interested in generated docs and who have availability to participate in a working group to help smooth out specifically the kubelet process, but also for generated docs as a whole. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, so Jim, awesome. Thank you for being willing to help. Other folks who are interested. Okay, well, Jennifer and Andrew, are you able to take some time to help Jim come up to speed?
Sure.
Sure.
Awesome. Cool. Let's see. Jennifer, reporting only, should this SIG be taking the lead on container D docs?
I think, yeah, Zach Arnold joined. He and I were talking about this in DM yesterday, last week, sometime, not today.
Yeah.
Do you have any updates, Zach?
Yep. So after talking with the release team, everyone is aware that eventually the project wants to move in the direction of getting away from the Docker shim, which, Tim Pepper sent me the best link for those of us who are like, I need a diagram. Let me look for it really quickly. It's a great explanation on like the underlying container runtimes. Cryo. I'm hoping I can find it quickly before, you know, I'm probably not going to. I don't want to waste time. So, but basically, everybody said yes. We would like to move in this direction. Nobody's aware of any specific concerted effort, especially in part of this release, to be using Containerd as the default container runtime interface for Kubernetes. I know that his name, Stephen Augustus, said that that Red Hat will be using Cryo as its container runtime interface, and yes, so that is that's the current state of the ecosystem, so to speak. Essentially, we will be going there. We don't know when, probably within a year. That was probably not helpful, sorry.
Well, I'll just say I asked because
I found the link.
The rumor that I have heard, and I think y'all know where I got it from, is that there is, in fact, a concerted push to move to Containerd for 1.12. However, it would appear that there's some fairly big communication gap there, so perhaps we need to just sort of put this on a collective background thread, and I will see whether I can get more information and bring it back.
If I might guess, is this a Heptio-sponsored-ish project?
That was not a guess, Zach. That was not a guess.
Which I think is completely and totally fine and awesome. Is there nobody kind of focused on any Containerd documentation at present? Because it would kind of be bad if we all of a sudden switch into Containerd land and everyone's just like, what just happened to my...
This is why I asked the question, right? You know, I started hearing, I assumed that there was more conversation going on at the release level than clearly there is, which is why I asked you, Zach, and why I stuck it in this meeting's agenda. But it does sound as though what I need to do is go away and do a little more research before we start worrying about it as a group. If we even try.
Yeah. We have 66 features slated right now for this release.
Wow.
And after looking at each of the features, I didn't see anything that even looked like it was an on-ramp for Containerd, but it's totally possible.
It would be the first I've heard of it. Sorry, go ahead, Luke.
I was just going to say, I'm not sure what my role should be here, but I guess that since I am the CNCF person and Containerd is a CNCF project, I'd be happy to act as like a point person intermediary for
You go and tell those guys. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, I will. Yeah, because I know that the container D docs are pretty thin in general. So I'd be, if we need to spearhead a big improvement effort on that end, I would be happy to act.
That could be a fun project for like KubeCon North America if you wanted to do like a docs sprint, like we did at the last contributor.
That could be interesting. That's what early December, I believe.
That's correct.
I also want to see a clear, a clearer release drive to include Container D in Kubernetes before we start assigning a sprint like that.
Fair.
Yeah, look, Zach and I can talk.
I put this item in the agenda. I chatted briefly with Zach and made assumptions, which clearly were unwarranted. So I will go away and perform whatever I can in the way of penitential and compensatory.
No, this is great because we got to panic and it was over nothing. So it's always nice when it's over nothing.
At least for now.
I came late. What did I miss?
Well, and not only that, if it turns out that the thing is happening sooner rather than later, we are actually out in front of it, sort of, a little bit.
We are aware. Exactly. Cool. So Luke, let's follow up on Container D docs and where they are and how we can support that from the CNCF side.
Yep. All right, Zach, we can talk off channel about that.
Sounds good. All right. Let's see. Jennifer, I realize that this is a favorite soapbox of both yours and mine, so I would like to give you some space to pound the pulpit, but ask that you please keep it short.
All that I need to say is in the agenda, I wanted to make it known to the group before I submitted a pull request to amend the style guide because we do have issues with style guide compliance of all sorts. So before we add things to it, we should at least be aware as a group. I will now go away and submit a pull request and we can continue the conversation there.
Is there any way, I mean, I could be barking up the wrong tree. Is there any way to like codify this information into a way of like automatically scanning for things like you use the word just, only, simple, easy?
Yep, it's called a linter. There have been discussions about implementing one. We haven't done it yet because reasons.
I like engineering, so I'd be happy to assist with that.
Zach, if you want to
probably
propose a linter and create a linter and maintain the linter and provide clear documentation for maintaining the linter when you're hit by a bus.
Well, and not only that, I mean, sort of at what point, how do we implement the linter? Is it something that you run locally only? Is it actually, does it break the build?
I'm going to stop this right here and say that.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you.
Let us only talk about specifics when we have an actual proposal.
That sounds fair.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer, for opening a pull request to eliminate patronizing language from the documentation and to make that a standard. Appreciate that. Let's see. So next week is Write the Docs Cincinnati. I will be there. Jared will be there. Jennifer, you will be. Yes. Andrew will be.
And Cody too.
And Cody too. So we need someone to run this meeting next week. Needs to be a maintainer. It would be, I don't know, Zach, are you willing to?
We're around, yeah. I'd love to.
Awesome.
Well, but if all of you are at Write the Docs, is it worth having the meeting? I mean, it's going to be hard to get consensus on stuff, or should we consider just canceling, given it's going to be hard to get a quorum?
That's fair.
What do you think?
How do folks think?
I mean, we're going to miss all you popular people.
Oh, Brad. So Misty, I noticed, is giving the Emperor is unsure.
No, it was just more of a, it doesn't matter to me if it's canceled. Ooh, stereo.
I am agnostic as well. We're not at a super sensitive point in the release cycle. there's nothing, there's no, we're not trying to migrate the static site generator again. So I feel like, Andrew, thoughts?
So what I was thinking we can use, like while we're there at the Write the Docs, would be to use Tuesday to do some Sig Docs planning. So maybe instead of a regular meeting that like we're doing now, we could, when we're doing that planning, we could, have it maybe online if people want to hop on and see or participate in that sort of stuff.
Oh, that'd be good.
So we could cancel the regular meeting, but then just like, open it up for when we're doing the planning discussion stuff.
Okay. So yeah, that's a great idea. So let's just keep the regular time, and instead of having a regular meeting, we'll just devote it to planning work and planning priorities for the next X period of time. Does that sound good? Andrew?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. Andrew, would you like to talk about Write the Docs Cincinnati and what people want?
Right. So my initial thought was to do sort of like a PR bash on that Monday. But it seems like there's sort of a desire to also do a regular like doc sprint. So I just want to see what people wanted, and then I would kind of organize accordingly. Is Jennifer still on? Because I think she had an opinion about that. No, she's muted. Because I thought we would.
Sorry, Andrew. I was trying to type in the chat, and then you called me out. And I'm multitasking challenged today. I guess I'm willing to just deal with this sort of solo because I feel like I'm the one who created the situation. I believe that there is some expectation that folks will show up to Write the Docs Cincinnati with an interest in participating in doc sprints and no project to work on. And most projects that are showing up aren't prepared to deal with that. We've dealt with it in the past, so I thought it would be good if we came prepared to deal with it again. But that said, it needs to be, pretty lightweight, because what we can ask people to do is going to depend on their background and comfort level and familiarity and how many of them there are and how much hand-holding around CLA issues we're willing to do. So it needs to be kind of flexible and improvisatory. This is part of what was driving my style guide suggestion, because that seemed like a really good, easy cleanup for folks who aren't familiar with Kubernetes.
Oh, that would be good.
But anyway, that's...
So would we be doing those things in parallel, or should we cancel the PR bash? Or because it seemed like the PR queue is getting big, and we sort of need to, because we had discussed maybe like once a quarter trying to focus effort to trim it down.
I think doing it in parallel makes sense. I don't anticipate there being so many people that we would need more than one person helping out with the doc sprint. And I'm volunteering to do that if need be.
Okay. I mean, we can sit in the same area,
Right. But still have like the rest of y'all focused on a PR bash. And I mean, I've never had a case where I needed to hold hands a lot at a doc sprint where I couldn't also work on something else. So
okay. So do you want to run sort of the doc sprint, and I'll run the coordinated PR bash?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. So what is the time for the doc sprint during the day? Like, because I'll need to let everyone know.
That's a good question.
Yep, looking it up now.
Because it's also East Coast time, right?
Oh, right. You're thinking about coordinating. Sorry,
yeah,
not just in person.
Yeah.
I really ought to have this thing up at this point.
It just says all day for.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a specific. However, I will go ask.
So are we okay to table that pending further clarification from the event staff.
Okay. Yeah, we can send out emails and stuff.
Okay.
All right, and then we're okay with doing Tuesday as like the Sig Docs planning thing, right?
Yes, but can you say a little bit more about what you have specifically in mind for planning, Andrew?
So I just wanted to be sort of like a continuation of when we had the Sig Docs Summit back in Write the Docs in Portland. So I figured since we were just there, all together, we might as well make use of the time. And I personally was kind of like doc sprinted out, so I'm not sure that I would participate in other doc sprints anyway. So yeah, like Zach, you and I, we can coordinate, like, get the notes and stuff from when we met earlier, and then just continue on like the discussion. And I was thinking about like, trying to form a strategic plan for like what are the things we're trying to do, and then which initiatives or which specific projects, would I think fulfill those or move those forward.
It's a good idea, and I think it makes sense to do it again in December. But doing it now, I think also makes sense. I think we're approaching the professional time of year where having the kind of clarity that a good planning session provides gives us the clarity that we need for setting like annual goals, helping our employers set their own internal priorities and things like that. So yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, because I figure we should just use whatever time we can when we happen to be together, and then it's easier to just do this incrementally, because I think I learned from our last Sig Docs Summit that we just don't have that much time, or even if we did, it'd be hard to just do this for like 2 days straight. So we might as well just do it in little incremental bursts when we can.
If you have a planning session, it would, oh, sorry. Are you going to unmute or me? Okay, sorry. I think it might be good to go back over the results of the last planning session that we had right after Write the Docs. We did a big Sig Docs meeting, and I am honestly not sure how to map what we've done since then to what we talked about before. I don't remember. I'm not saying we have done things or haven't done things.
Yeah. It's a really good opportunity to track where we've been versus where we projected, and iterate successively.
Yeah, sounds good. That's all I had.
Sorry, I was taking notes there. All right, next item is what to do with owners' sub-aliases files in the internationalization repos. This came up recently because we had a PR open from a member of the SIG Azure repo updating their list of reviewers in the Chinese docs repo. And it's sort of like updating generated docs downstream. It's not really the place to do it. So the question that came up for me is, what should we be doing with owners files and owners sub-aliases, and specifically owners sub-aliases? Owners files, I think it's fairly clear to strip them out and make them repo specific, so that each individual localization repo has its own set of reviewers and approvers. For owners sub-aliases, I'd also like to float the idea of having that be an empty file, so that when an internationalization repo starts up, that their owner's sub-aliases file is empty. The reason for that is otherwise, Prow, anytime that, Prow the bot plugin, or Blunderbuss the plugin, will use that list to assign reviewers to PRs in languages that they don't understand or may not have fluency in. And that seems like an undesirable state of affairs to ask people to review PRs in a non-fluent language. And that's a scaling problem as well. Is the more languages you have, the more sort of randomly assigned PRs in different languages. That said, SIG Azure has people who specifically have fluency in Chinese and would like to have reviewers available for Chinese content in that repository. I don't. I think that's fine. I think that having language-specific reviewers makes sense. I would ask that folks who make downstream contributions like that also be mindful of any upstream changes that need to happen as a result of that kind of clarity. But I guess so. Here's my proposal: that we provide empty owner sub-aliases files and then allow SIGs to update or allow SIGs to add language-specific reviewers as they please. Does that sound reasonable? Strong thumbs up from Brad. And Andrew. Jennifer, anybody see any reason, like, will this all come crashing down? Will having language-specific reviewers de-index our docs on Google? No? Okay.
Too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Wow.
Okay, then that is what I will take back to Stephen Augustus and SIG Azure. And let's see. Empty files. SIGs can add to empty files as preferred / needed. Speaking of de-index docs, let's talk about doing a blameless postmortem for how our docs were de-indexed from Google search results recently.
All right, let me share my screen. I think it's this one. Are you able to see the postmortem doc? Yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, just to reiterate, this is supposed to be a no blame postmortem. So we're not trying to single anyone out or anything like that. The goal is to learn from our mistakes, like figure out what assumptions we had that were incorrect, and figure out how to improve it in the future, right? So this doc was put together by several people, including Jared, Tom, Zach, and Luke, and myself. So it gives a good summary of like what the issue is, and I can kind of take you through the quick history if you want, because I think one of the main takeaways, at least I have, is that we need to spread this information around. Like, a lot of it was sitting in my head, and then when Luke was making his changes, like, he wasn't aware of this stuff, and I didn't quite understand what he was doing, and so there was just we kind of just like missed each other. So like in terms of the background, so originally when we first switched to Netlify, right, that enabled us to have version docs. So we'd have these like subdomains for the different versions, like v1-8, that sort of thing. And so that necessitated us to find a way to make sure those didn't show up in the Google search results. So what I did at the time was create this header file that was included during the build command for just these specific subdomains. But then as we then switched from Jekyll to Hugo, all those, we started using the Netlify TOML file, which had all the build commands and stuff, which was good in that it made the whole process a little bit more transparent, and you could see the control mechanism. And it was also to ensure that all the future versions of the site that relied on Hugo were using the correct build commands, right? So then the downside of that is that I needed to then move some of this logic into the Netlify TOML file, right? So as you can see, what I did was I put the command that copied the no index header into the default build command, and I created a separate context so that for master, that branch, when it was being deployed as production, that it would not use that build command. It would just use the regular Hugo command and skip that. And so the issue then was that through two separate PRs, one was to try to like add or make use of the HTTP2 server push technology, and then the other one was to, I think, upgrade us to using a newer version of Hugo. Those kind of stepped on that file, and then the no index directive got pulled into the header for the master branch and for the production server as well. So that is why we started getting the main site de-indexed. And as you can see from the graph, it started to drop off, and it was slow. And I think one of the other issues is we didn't have any monitoring in place to check for this sort of thing. So one of the small things that happened, which should have been a signal, but I don't think I understood at the time, was that a really old version of the site, which was like the 1.4, like, we had gotten pings from people in the Slack Sig Docs channel being like, well, these links are broken and stuff. And when I dug into it, it was because they were referencing this really old site, which in retrospect only bubbled up because the regular index, search results started dropping off, and so those surfaced, right? So that should have been a signal, but didn't realize at the time. So after the regular site results started dropping off, people couldn't find it anymore. And we were notified through both through like Slack and also like several issues, both in the KK repo and the K website repo. So we were able to take corrective measures quickly. But since the Google search indexing kind of happens on the time scale for the reindexing and stuff is like on the order of weeks, we probably won't see it return to normal for another couple of weeks. So you can see the indexing here is starting to recover, but the index status has not recovered yet. So the no index tag, the X robots tag in the header is the root cause, and it was fixed. So what we learned was that the page headers are extremely important and shouldn't be modified. It should only be modified when necessary, and we should make sure we vet it through several people. We need checks to be put in place that notify Sig Docs maintainers if pages have been de-indexed, and prevent pages from bearing the no index header in production. More broadly, we need new features added to the site to have more comprehensive. When new features are added to the website, there should be more comprehensive, like, sort of risk analysis and, like, vetting of this before they're merged. Let's see, knowledge of the infrastructure mechanisms, how they should behave, should not just be in one person, but like they should reside in many people. And the default behavior, in retrospect, should probably be set in terms of the fail-safe, right? So if something goes wrong, like, what is the state? Because specifically, like, I bet we would rather have things over-indexed and have like search results from the other versions of the site rather than having nothing indexed, because that's probably a worse state of affairs, right? So we should restructure it so if something did fail, it's not going to like remove all of the search results. And then, yeah, the critical infrastructure should be documented and known to all of Sig Docs. The things that went well are, once the issue was identified, it was quickly fixed. And that happened within a few hours. And then, yeah, the issues mechanism worked well. Like, people filed issues and, kind of reported through. The things that went poorly, even though there were comments in the netlify toml file to, identify like the no index mechanism, I don't think they were clearly stated enough so that people understood the importance of what those lines actually did. And then, let's see, I was CC'd on the PRs to change it, but I did not get a chance to address them quickly enough, or actually at all. So then they end up getting merged anyway. Yeah, the changes that kind of dismantled the no index mechanism happened over 2 separate unrelated PRs. And so like, I mean, if it were just one PR, that would, be one thing, but like it kind of happened in 2 different steps. So it was harder to see like what the impact was going to be. And then, yeah, because the Google search changes like happen on a timescale of weeks, it'll be a while before we see results return to normal. Yeah, even though we have the Google Search Console that we can look at the indexing for the site, it's not regularly checked. We don't have any monitoring, automation around that to check. And then let's see. Yeah, and then as I mentioned before, we did get these reports of this old site bubbling up, but that I think at the time we didn't realize that was a signal to an issue that was going on. Where we got lucky. The issue was reported by an outside user. Actually, I think it was a couple users, if I remember correctly. But then they reported to GitHub, and also I think people pinged me in Slack as well. So we got good response once it became apparent. So the action items to kind of fix things and prevent this from happening in the future are to, I guess, finish investigating the incident and see if there's any other recommendations we should make. And then we need to create mechanisms to detect future incidents. So I think that would be like creating some sort of monitoring that would, on the production site to let us know if these sort of things happen again. And then we want to mitigate future incidents. So have sort of a default state where the no index header is not present, right? So that if something happens, like the failsafe will be a reasonable state that we're okay with. And then we want to prevent future incidents. So let's see. So while detection mitigation steps are outlined immediately above, website builds should fail if improper headers are included. Okay, so then maybe put some test mechanisms in so the build will not complete if they don't if they don't fulfill these checks. And then lastly, ensure institutional knowledge, which is I think we should, I think formally hand off sort of the ownership of the critical infrastructure to CNCF and make sure it's documented. And then Zach, you and Luke and stuff, you can make sure it's properly disseminated in Sig Docs so that many of us know who it is. And then this is just a timeline of what happened, but that's pretty much it. Are there any questions? Nope. I think I may be presenting this again in the community meeting on Thursday if there's time there. I'm going to ping Paris and see. But while I'm on that subject, Zach, I think they wanted us to give an update for Sig Docs. Will you be able to do that?
I will not be there. I am happy to work with you on it, but I will be out of office.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll take it then. And then I'll just probably do this while I'm giving the update.
Cool. Thank you for putting this together, Andrew. Thank you for wrangling this process. This is an awesome blameless postmortem. Yeah, that's while we were discussing it, I added a bit on the fly to things that went poorly. Specifically, that I approved Luke's original PR without any mind for the downstream impact that it created. And without enforcing the gate check of, hey, this is a new feature proposal. This needs to go in front of Sig Docs at a weekly meeting. So I think all of the recommendations there are solid. I guess the things that I would like to reiterate for the future is for new feature proposals to really make sure that that there is a proposal that comes in front of the SIG, because I think that we could have. Excuse me. I think that we could have averted this entirely if we'd had enough eyes on it before it went live, and that was my bad for letting a PR or approving a PR that hadn't gone through the community rigor. But as a process, this is hugely valuable. So thank you, Andrew, for putting this together.
Yeah, and even though Jared's not here, I want to thank him for putting together the original like sort of skeleton of the document, and then we were able to fill it in.
Awesome. Any other questions or feedback about a blameless postmortem process or any of the particulars involved in this particular incident? All right, let's move on. Zach Arnold, do you want to talk about the messages that Dan Kahn sent to Sig Docs about the content delivery network for the Chinese version of Kubernetes and Bing over Google?
Sure. So I attempted to open this link on my work machine. Apparently, we are not allowed to open up links that go to China, which I guess that makes sense. So, but I was able to open the PR and the issue. So those links are there. But basically, one of them just adds a huge snippet of JavaScript. I would ask the individual who submits Math Costa, you know, I should probably, this would be helpful if you guys could see what I'm talking about, my guess is. All right. 1, 2, 3. So this basically, looking at the file change, other than some CSS stuff, it's just a snippet of JavaScript where basically on load of the initial website, it calls out to ipinfo.io, and if the response country is not coming from China, then it will render the Google search results. Otherwise, the default is render Bing search results. So what that basically means is, if I read this right, is this nifty little search bar right here will switch to showing Google search results versus Bing search results, depending on how that initial curl works. So that's that. So basically, I think that's completely fine with me, unless people have a suggestion. Dan basically said in the issue, I would prefer, instead of doing, is it Baidu or Baidu? Instead of that, Baidu. Instead of Baidu search, Bing has a nice alternative because they have UIs in many languages. I didn't have a personal preference, so this looks good to me. Assuming it actually works. I can't test this in China, and apparently I'm not even allowed to go to visit a Chinese website, but it'd be great to have somebody who could just quickly run that through. And then I would say my only suggestion on this is to clean up the commit history. I'm not sure why there's 14. And then the second thing is, it's coming over right now. You should see that. All right. So hosting third-party assets.
Hey, Zach, before you move on, I just had a thought about the Google versus Bing search that I wonder if it's better instead for us to give people a choice about what search engine they use, and then maybe like in the chooser thing have something that grays it out if they're in China, grays out Google if they're in China, and then like we could have a tooltip that says it's not available with your IP address or something like that. It seems like doing it transparently in the background is kind of not super transparent. I don't know. I have a funny feeling about it. I don't even know why I have a funny feeling about it. It just sort of seems like.
Well, I think I know why, Misty. So I think your instincts are very, very sharp here, right? The problem that I think you're articulating is that we have arbitrarily picked winners and losers. You know, well, China, they get Bing, but the rest of the folks get Google. And there is a potential for the perception being that, you know, well, this is because, you know, the history of Kubernetes started from Google and blah, 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 even though you were just trying to be pragmatic and make a good decision. So I think what Misty was hitting on was if you did it the way that she described, which I think is really slick, it gives you that community feel of, listen, we're giving you the right choices we can tell based on, the country you're in, but we didn't have a preference. We're an open source community. We're not picking winners and losers on this between, and again, I'm coming from the company that doesn't have a search engine, right? So I'm neutral, right?
Yet. You don't have a search engine yet?
Yes. You know something I do? Don't know, Zach?
I'm kidding.
But Misty, I thought you had a really, really just outstanding, brilliant insight and solution there, to be perfectly frank.
So I'm actually just taking notes on this, and I guess what I can do is personally take a note and say, respond to the person who raised the PR and basically say, would it be possible to turn this into a selection?
I'm also not putting myself on the hook to do this.
No.
Right.
That I suggested, because I have no idea how to do it. I'm not a JavaScript person. It takes me like a million years to do anything interesting in JavaScript.
No, but you saw a potential landmine, and not only did you did a great job, because you not only recognized the landmine, but you also came up with a very, very pragmatic solution to the problem, which should not, sign you up for solving it, right? I mean,
Question though for the group, we do have to, I think, probably provide a default.
Sure.
Okay, so are we comfortable with the defaults that are presently existing, where in in the rest of the world, we use Google by default, otherwise it's Bing in China, or would you prefer Baidu in China?
Well, it's interesting. Sorry, Cody, I keep talking and Cody's audio is on. It's interesting to me that by providing choices, we can then backfill and get metrics to back up the choices. Because we can say, look, we're giving you the choice and most people are choosing Google. So the reason why we have Google search as the default is informed by metrics instead of informed by the way that it always was. Like, I think that we can all hypothesize that people are going to choose Google by default if they have a choice for the most part. I mean, the market seems to back that up. But I don't think we actually have a way to say we chose Google search because people wanted us to have Google search as the default. I don't know. It seems like an interesting opportunity to, like, we can get analytics based on people changing that. We can even put like a analytics event specifically on the toggle to see what percentage of people actually ever change the default.
This might be also an opportunity to involve the Chinese localization team, just get their input, at least their visibility on it.
Yeah.
But,
because I don't know what search is popular in China, but my guess would be that it would be Baidu over Bing.
Would be my guess as well. But yeah, just getting, if we could get, who's the Chinese maintainer is, I can't remember their username. But yeah, if we can get the Chinese docs team to at least get, hopefully input, but at least visibility into the process, they might be able to provide some clarity and provide their, if they have data of their own about search engine preferences, that might be useful to come into play.
There may be also politics here that we're not familiar with about what search engines people are using in China.
Right. So yeah, Misty, I think that's really excellent. It's really excellent feedback on this PR, and it's good to push back to the original submitter. So yes, +1.
Good job, Misty.
Clear to move on to the CDN one, and then
yes.
I'll be done talking. Cool. So the other thing that Dan mentioned was that it is It is slow, I believe. Yeah, slow for assets to load on the Kubernetes.cn website. And he believes, based on this, looks like the vast majority of this load time involves websites that are probably mostly American-based. He mentioned jQuery. So, yeah. So the proposed solution would be, I mean, obviously stuff is cached locally, but being able to move assets from external URLs to being hosted by Kubernetes.io, or somehow being able to replicate those assets onto multiple CDNs. So using the Alibaba CDN that I think we have set up, according to his message here, I'm inferring that there is an Alibaba CDN that we have. So I asked a question, is it possible when we do a Netlify deploy to deploy assets to multiple CDNs? And I think that would probably solve this one pretty easily. It could be a configuration issue as opposed to like one where we need a serious refactor. Anyone have any thoughts or opinions?
No, just if we can handle. I think your instincts are right. If we can handle it through a different CDN, I would rather avoid refactoring the site. I'd rather avoid trying to be all things to all people and taking on additional maintenance burden of hosting assets on the site. So if there is a CDN that we can use, that would be optimal.
Is there a way to research if it's possible when Netlify deploys to deploy? I have no idea what the orchestration of a deployment looks like in Netlify. I don't know if it's just like it dumps a bunch of files somewhere, or if it can dump multiple tasks in different areas.
Just to boost Misty's entry in chat, storing assets on Kates.io is a bad idea for maintenance. Period.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So I will respond. I'll wait for Dan's message, and then I'll respond to this particular PR asking for this this requester to be able to provide users the option of using different different search engines. Okay, that's all I had. Thanks, Zach.
The surprise ending. Do you want to give us an update on 1.12?
Oh yes, that's right. Okay, so so the docs deadline is 7 days from today. Or docs PR open deadline is 7 days from today. So now it's going to end up being time for Jim, Tim, and I. That is an awesome name for a sitcom. To be able to kind of start harassing lovingly people into just having an open PR against the 112 branch. So I will make sure that that's up to date with master today. He said as he wrote down that note to make sure that he would do that. Update master. And then, then hopefully at next Sig Docs meeting, we'll be like, we have 66 PRs open. Holy Lord. Against this branch, so many features. Anyway.
So, Zach, I have a silly question. Forgive my ignorance. So, if I have something I want to go into the release and into master, has the process changed? Do I push the PR against master and just add a label for the release, or did we change that? And I apologize if I should know this.
This might be a bit tribal knowledge. Now, currently, there is a branch that's running parallel to master that I'm kind of periodically merging master into.
Okay.
And I should make sure I have my Git terminology correct. It is a merge, not a rebase. So histories will definitely kind of be getting interesting. But basically, all the PRs are going to be open against the release 112 branch. And then as they get approved by people, I will merge them into the 112 branch and then have a final PR that goes into master. And if someone has a disagreement with that, because I have not thought of something that could go horribly wrong in Git, I would love to have that feedback.
Okay, so if I want to get something into 112, I gotta
Right.
make sure I put it on your branch.
112, the release 112 branch.
Okay. All right. Well, I might follow up with you on that later to make sure I do it right.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
it's in the PR console where it has the arrow from your branch on your fork. It just needs to be going into Kubernetes/release 112. That's it.
Okay. So, but I mean, because usually what I do is I would git clone master, but I'll talk to you offline.
Okay.
Okay.
For the most part, it's going to end up looking like master.
And so we can't do the rebasing anymore because we can no longer push into the repos, right? Was that?
Yeah, that's part of the problem. The other part of the problem is that GitHub changed something at some point in time, and it used to be that GitHub could handle force pushing, like it could handle open pull requests against a branch that got force pushed. And that's no longer the case. So whenever I was force pushing into 111 to rebase against master, I would then have to go and manually rebase each open pull request, which it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't the best. And there are a few Sig Docs contributors who do not allow us to commit into their PR branches, like explicitly and intentionally don't allow us to, which meant that those few people had to go and do that work themselves every time I force pushed. So it was too much work to ask them. And it was too much work for the release manager too. So we went back to the merge workflow, and eventually we may have some augmentation of that, which makes things a little bit more repeatable. But this seems to be working okay for Zach, from what I have understood.
Excellent. All right. Any last minute announcements before we call it? All right, that's a SIG meeting. Thanks, everyone. Have a good week.
Yeah.